Is diagnosis needed, or is it just classifications? And should we go even further? And is it just understanding where you fall along the continuum of a neurodiversity? This is a really interesting subject. And personally, in my life, I came across this just in the last 2 weeks through one of my children. Now, when we're looking at diagnoses of neurodiversities, there's certain criteria that the DSM-5 states that an individual needs in order to get a full diagnosis. And when we get a full diagnosis, a lot of times what we get is access to help and accommodations. So if you're missing one of those areas, is that enough to restrict you from accessing the help you may need? When we're looking at the DSM-5 and working to get these diagnoses, the main criteria is you need struggle. Because remember, the DSM-5 works through the medical model of what is wrong and what can be fixed. And if there is no struggle, there is nothing to fix. But that doesn't mean you don't think a certain way. It doesn't mean that you may not have that neurobiology or the neurology associated with that processing style. A little bit of an insight into the life I've been living the last 2 weeks. So over the last couple of months, we started working with a psychologist in our area to get my son assessed for autism spectrum and ADHD. What's interesting is what we got within the last 2 weeks was the results. And my son met all the criteria of the autism spectrum except for crisis. And what's interesting about that is he grew up in a neurodiverse home where I made sure that we didn't have excess stimuli, that we honored everybody's sensory issues, that we ate whole foods, we reduce stress, we honor ourselves, and we promote surrounding ourselves with individuals that accept us for who we are versus promoting our kids to get in with the popular group and conform or mask and hide who they are. The psychologist actually told me that if I didn't have such a neurodiverse home, he would have met criteria because he would have been struggling. This doesn't make sense to me. We shouldn't restrict access to accommodations, to support, because somebody isn't struggling in the moment. Now, here's the thing. They said, as soon as he starts to struggle, he can come back in and get full diagnosis. So he has to wait until he is in full crisis mode to go back, to talk to them, to wait for them to write the report so that he can get access to the support that happens for those who meet all the criteria along that spectrum. It makes zero sense from a well-being perspective. Wait until you are in crisis, and then we'll look to help you. Even though we can say that you meet all the criteria of processing that certain way. An interesting thing is if we look at this in the health world, many of us can come across this even within the medical system. So I last year found out that my liver was starting to go. Now, my doctor said, don't worry about it. We'll wait until you're in crisis, and then we'll look to put in interventions versus having a proactive approach on well-being and saying, why don't we look at your diet? Why don't we look at your stress levels? What alcohol are you drinking? How are you sleeping? What is this? What is that? So that we can make sure you don't end up in crisis mode. But that's not the way the medical system works. The medical system is let's see you fail, and then we'll pick you up. I believe that within neurodiversity and even health and well-being, the greater global of well-being is that we need to work with preventing crisis. We need to support ourselves so that we don't end up there. Because when we get into crisis, especially emotionally and mentally, it can take us to some pretty dark places. So, my question for you is, do you think you just need to know that you're along the continuum to bring in meaning and mattering as to why you show up the way you do in your social environment? Or do you need to know that you're in crisis and that's why you got the diagnosis? Curious, I would love to hear what you have to say. If you find these podcasts helpful, please click like and subscribe because that helps me know that this information is reaching you and it's making an impact in your life, allowing you maybe to look at the topic of dyslexia from a different lens.